Senator, nice to see you, sir.
Hey, good to be here.
You are calling for a formal declaration of war against ISIS. Why?
Our founding fathers were very clear that you don't go to war without the authority of Congress. In fact, I think the most important responsibility we have in serving in Congress is to deliberate over going to war. I can't think of anything more important, and the president's basically doing it on his own. Now, this isn't the first thing the president's decided to go on his own, but this is pretty important, and so we've introduced a declaration of war which would give the constitutional imprimatur to going to war. He should have done it 5 months ago, but even now we're going to try to force him to live by the rules of Congress.
All right, the Constitution says that the Congress has the authority to declare war. That's clear. It's Article 1, Section 8. The president claims that he has authority under two things. One is the 2001 authorization passed after the 9/11 attacks that President Bush used, and the 2002 authorization sought by President George Bush for the Iraq War. That he says that he's doing it lawfully under those two.
Both of those, I'd say, would be absurd contentions. Basically, in 2001, we voted for an authorization that said the people who attacked us on 9/11, that we would go after them. Well, this group wasn't in existence then, and this group isn't even allied with al-Qaeda. This group is at odds with al-Qaeda. So I think it's absurd. I told John Kerry that when he came before our committee. That's absurd to try to say a linkage to a war started 15 years ago against the people who attacked us on 9/11. Now, I am for doing something against ISIS. I just think we ought to do the right thing constitutionally and vote on it. My declaration of war also limits this in the sense that I don't want ground troops back there. I think the troops on the ground ought to be the people who live there. And it also says that within 1 year it expires, so we would have to vote again. I don't want perpetual war, and that's what we've had for the last 15 years is war without end. I think the war would have to be renewed if we want to go on beyond a year.
Is President Obama acting unlawfully now if you say that those two prior provisions are ridiculous or don't apply?
Yes, absolutely. I think he has no statutory authority and no constitutional authority. The Constitution, I think, would allow, and most people say, for the repelling of an imminent attack. But once an attack goes on for months and months and you're actually not defending anything, you're actually going out and offensively trying to either conquer territory or conquer an opponent, I don't think that's a defensive maneuver, nor is that temporary or an imminent attack. That is something that ought to be contemplated by Congress.
What did Secretary Kerry say?
He said, which I think is absurd, he said, well, yeah, if 2001 doesn't do it, the president has Article 2 authority to do whatever he wants. I disagree with that. I think most constitutional scholars do. And I think most people in the American public do not think the president has unlimited power to go to war.
What's the appetite among your colleagues in the U.S. Senate? Do you have any Democrats, first of all?
It's actually something that actually doesn't split neatly along party lines. I would say there's as many Democrats as Republicans, or probably more Democrats than Republicans that actually agree with me on this. Republicans are good if it has to do with immigration or Obamacare. They say, oh, the president can't do things by himself. But when it comes to war, some Republicans will say, oh, no, the president, no matter who he is, can do whatever he wants. So some Republicans agree with John Kerry. Unlimited power to the presidency for war. I think in every area, immigration, Obamacare, and war, that the Constitution limited the president's powers.
Well, it's sort of interesting. There's been sort of a slippery slope with the Constitution over the past, 10, 15 years. I mean, even if you look at, you and I think probably agree that that for NSA should get a warrant if it's going to seize records. I mean, people are sort of thinking that the Constitution is just some sort of silly piece of paper.
Yeah, and it's amazing that these things were written over 200 years ago, and still they apply to today. The Fourth Amendment on making sure your records were secure was written because they didn't like the British soldiers having general warrants with nobody's name on it and going into your house and taking your papers. And so we really try to prevent this from happening, and it still applies today. The only difference is your papers are somehow digitalized, and sometimes other people hold your papers for you. But I don't think you relinquish a privacy interest if I let the phone company hold my records. I think those are still mine. They can't share them with my neighbor, so they shouldn't share them with the government.